Oh, oh, now that is rich. Oh, hi. I'm Pone from OhNoRobo, and I was just sitting back and enjoying a good round of video game time. Because video games are really fun. But I got to thinking, what about when they're not fun? What about when they're bad? What about when they're steaming piles of horse shit? Well, we have a new segment here in OhNoRobo, and we're going to start it off the right way. It's called How Bad Is It? And we're going to take some of the games that were mostly crapped on by critics and find out if they're really as bad as they say they were, or if they're hidden gems. Now I figure we have to start strong on this, so I chose a game that is relatively new, but when it was released, it got completely destroyed by critics. Splatterhouse. Now this game was released for the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 back in 2010. It was actually a reboot from the series that started in 1988 and finished off around 1993 with the third sequel. Or Splatterhouse 1, 2, and 3. I don't know. So I decided what I was going to do for the first segment here is just dive right into Splatterhouse, play it through the whole way, maybe even twice, and find out what really is so bad about it, and is there anything good about it? Is there anything redeeming about this game? Because when games get destroyed by the critics, they usually tank, and this one did, and I doubt we'll ever see another one. So I want to look into it. I'm going to play through it, and I'm going to be very honest and open, and I'm not going to be lax. What I'm going to do is look at all the aspects that are bad about it, and all the aspects that are good about it, if there are any, and then mix those together and find out, really, if it's as bad as everyone thought it was. So, with that said, sit back and relax as we find out Splatterhouse. How bad is it? Let's start this off by giving you a quick rundown of what the game is all about. Splatterhouse is an action platformer where you play as Rick, a nerdy dude who is stabbed and left for dead after he and his super hot and way out of his league, seriously how is this even possible, girlfriend named Jenny enter the house of an evil doctor who has summoned an ancient force called the Corrupted. And he wants to do evil things. Of evil. Now, while Rick is lying in a ridiculously huge pool of his own blood, a strange mask called simply the Terror Mask beckons him to put it on and promises him the power to save Jenny. Rick, moments away from death, agrees, and as he puts on the Terror Mask, transforms into a giant hulking badass. Together, Rick and the Terror Mask will have to fight through hordes of evil minions of the Mad Doctor in order to save Jenny. Now, that's really all you need to know about the story going in, so let's just start dissecting this. Number 1. The animations can get really choppy. It's hard to explain, but when you're in the middle of combat and start wailing on hordes of enemies, you might notice that the game seems to lag a bit throughout the combat animations. Now, that's not to say that it isn't smooth at all, but there is definitely a feeling that the fluidity just isn't there. This is especially prevalent in the platforming sections when you have to do a lot of jumping and grabbing. It feels like the animations are really sticky, and again, show no fluidity. Speaking of which, the freaking platforming. Oh my god. Some of the most frustrating sections in the entire game, and I'm not even talking about the sections where the game reverts to a 2D side-scrolling style. I'll get to those later. No, what I'm talking about here is just the plain old platforming sections. You know, sections that a game like Prince of Persia did so well? Yeah, well, in Splatterhouse, they fucking blow ass. The game already does a terrible job of giving you any indication of where and when you're supposed to jump to reach a certain ledge or landing point, and when you add in the poor physics detection, this led to some serious rage out moments. The game apparently tries to give you some sort of direction in certain areas by either making certain parts glow white or having the Terror Mask shout out some sort of warning. But by the time you see or hear them, you've probably already prematurely jumped or fallen to your death. Even when you get to a point where you feel like you know what to do next, the physics will ram your butthole so much that you'll still frigging die. To make matters worse, every time you fall, it's back to the loading screen, and oh, what a perfect segue into my next point. The load times are atrocious. They are terrible. It may be one of the worst parts of the game, and there are several problems with the game. but the load times make it so frustrating that I just want to pull my freaking face off, throw it on the ground, and then stomp on it and then pee everywhere. It's awful. You'll be playing a really tough section, right? And you'll have a section where you maybe have to do some platforming that isn't really very well explained. And then when you die, back to the loading screen again, and you have to sit there for like 30, 45, maybe a minute of loading times every time you die. And it usually starts you back further than you were, and the checkpoints are kind of far apart. And it gets so grating, and the load screen is so annoying after the first couple of times you see it. I'm sure that it could have been corrected with a little bit more time, and maybe Namco was just trying to meet their deadline and get the game out. I get that. But when you install the game on your hard drive, there is no reason that it should take that long to load. And that's a heavy strike against this game. The 2D side-scrolling sections. Yeah, I'm complaining about this. While I can applaud the developers for trying to make side-scrolling sections that harken back to the original games, these can be some of the most frustrating parts in the game. Basically, you'll get to a certain area where the camera shifts to the side, and then you're running through the area in 2D style, bashing enemies into walls, dodging obstacles, and jumping onto platforms. The main issue here is that the physics engine doesn't change. You can't just take the 3D physics rules and lock them into a 2D style and expect that to work. It's insane. For example, since Rick controls and moves the same as when he's in 3D, that means that the horrible physics detection moves right along with him. This is especially horrible when you're jumping onto ledges. If you're even 1 pixel off, you're gonna fall, and then immediately die. And guess where that takes you? Fuck! Then it's back to the start to try your luck again. I died numerous times on these sections, and not because of my own error, but more because of the shoddy programming. It felt unfair, and no game should ever make you feel frustrated for its own design flaws.
Get it together, Rick! Smelly ass piece of Focus, damn it!
Another big problem that I have with Splatterhouse, and this is a problem that I haven't really heard too many people talk about, maybe because they didn't actually make it through the whole game, is that the enemy types. The same enemy types you will see over and over throughout the entire game. Once you get about halfway through, you've seen all there is to see, aside from a couple of color swaps, palette swaps on a few of the characters. It doesn't really change. It's the same enemies over and over and over again. And when you add that in with the same death animations when you do grab onto an enemy after they turn red and you execute them or whatever, it's just not, it wears off after the first couple of times you see it. It gets really old really fast. And that's one of the other big problems I have with this game. There's just not enough variety. This fucking bridge. I'm sure you remember seeing it earlier. I'm not even going to explain much about this. You already know how the physics, platforming, and load times suck. So let me just show you a quick little montage of just how many times I died on this section. Keep in mind that every time I fell, I had to sit through the fucking loading screen before trying again. Alright, so after ripping Splatterhouse apart a bit, I guess this would be a good time to go into some of the aspects that I actually liked about it. Hard to believe, I know, but there actually were some really awesome aspects to Splatterhouse that deserve a mention. I'll keep this part brief since it's not exactly a long list. The boss battles are all around pretty great. While they aren't really all that complex in nature, I found that these parts were maybe some of my favorites and definitely broke up the monotony of fighting the same enemy types over and over. Each boss felt unique in its design and was clearly distinguishable from the others that you faced. There's a couple of cool throwbacks to the original game's bosses that were pretty exciting, like the Poltergeist doll, where you're fighting a giant pile of household items that are encasing a possessed doll, or the hooded chainsaw-wielding Biggie Man. The Biggie Man fight was one of my favorites, mostly because of the way they introduce him and the manner in which you have to fight him.
Wait! I know this guy! Yeah, we are screwed.
The way the room goes super dark and then lights up as he drags his chainsaws towards you is just really awesome and was one of my personal favorite fights in the game. Aside from a couple of rehashes of the same boss here and there, I felt these battles were definitely a positive. The Terror Mask is hilarious. No joke, to break up the tension, the Terror Mask, voiced by legendary voice actor Jim Cummings, no joke, look him up on IMDb, will spout out some hilarious dialogue throughout the game, while he's not tormenting Rick, of course.
I ain't your mama, asshole. You still don't trust me, do you, Rick?
You already know the answer.
Well, that's too bad. Trusting me is the only chance you got.
He's literally so evil that he seems to get off by all the carnage that you create. Which makes me wonder if Rick really wants the Terror Mask on his face while it's practically getting off to all the blood and dismemberment. If there's not some fanfiction out there about that, someone jump on it. Okay, actually, no, don't.
Who deserves to be pussy? Say
The story... Okay, so it's not exactly Bret Easton Ellis level storytelling, but the story is actually pretty charming. It all boils down to a guy just trying to save his girl. It's been done countless times before, but the setting and grindhouse horror theme makes it feel kind of refreshing. The voice acting is superb, not just from the Terror Mask as I mentioned before, but by Rick, Jenny, and Dr. West. The only downside is that I felt the high caliber story deserved a better game around it. The combat. Yeah, I know I already said that there were problems with the combat, but that doesn't mean that it's completely broken. If you like games where you beat the shit out of hordes of enemies, then you'll probably like this game too. The combat does get repetitive after you've unlocked all of the moves, and the weapons are overall pretty disappointing. I'm pretty sure I heard a certain reviewer say that Splatterhouse had the best shotgun ever in a video game. No, not by a long shot. No pun intended. The weapons are fun for about 5 minutes and then they get old. Luckily, it's more fun to wail on the enemies with your bare fists and rip them apart. So yeah, combat is fun, but repetitive. I guess this would be more of a half positive, but we'll round it up to even it out. Rage Mode. After you've unlocked this ability and you've built up enough blood energy, you can unleash Rage Mode, where Rick grows spikes and blades out of his body and is invulnerable for a short period. While in this state, you can slice apart just about anything near you and turn the odds in your favor, especially after getting surrounded by some tougher enemy types. However, this mode does make a lot of the bosses much easier, and if you play on a lower difficulty, you can cheaply use it to make them way easier than they should be. Still, it's fun to rip apart everything around you for a few seconds, so that's still a plus for me. Well, I guess that's it. Now, I'm not really going to give the game a score. I don't think that's really fair. It's already gotten plenty of scores. So, how bad is it? It's pretty bad. It's not horrible, but it's not great. I would say it's about mediocre. It's not great, it's not horrible, but it's just kind of bad. I would also say and this may be something that I can't really describe. Like it's hard for me to explain it, but by the end of the game, by about the 11th or 12th phase, like near the very end of the actual game, I was just tired of it. I didn't want to play it anymore. I just wanted to put it away and never play it again. That really, and that's just a personal thing. I mean, you may not feel that way, but I did. It really took me out of the game. All of the, even like the dialogue with the Terror Mask and everything, it wears off after a while. If the gameplay doesn't stay fresh and fun, it really does get old, you know? So there's that. You know, a lot of things needed to be worked on a little longer, and I know that a lot of that had to do with the change in the hands in development. But, you know, when all is said and done, the game just didn't come together the way that I really wanted it to. And again, I would recommend it for a one-time playthrough. It's down in price now. I guarantee you can find it for really cheap, so I would recommend picking it up. But, you know, if you're going to spend more than $10 or $15 on it, don't bother. But anyway, that's it. That's all I have to say. I'm done. I'm done with Splatterhouse. Okay, so that's been the first episode of How Bad Is It? If you have any comments or you have a suggestion for me to play for next time, just leave it in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe. And until next time, this has been Pwn from OhNoRobo. Happy gaming.